The game journalists tell the story. The great Elden Ring was released. On our platforms, across the fog, the PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. Now, Miyazaki is nowhere to be found. And in the dawn of the February 25th release, those who forgot to warn their significant others that they'd be no-lifing it would be the first to perish. Soon, the citizens of Twitter, haters all, authored their complaints of Elden Ring. The mad taint of their newfound jealousy triggered the complaining. A war from which many lols were had. A war leading to everybody just ignoring them and playing Elden Ring anyway. Arise now, ye tarnished, ye noobs who yet to beat Margit, the fell omen.
No, God!
The call of long-lost hygiene speaks to us all. Horalu, chieftain of the strength build. The ever weird as hell gold mask whose quest I never did. Fear, the lady who keeps taking away my HP. The crazed caca consumer. And Sir Gideon Ofnir, the pipsqueak know-it-all nerd. And one other, whom rune farming and YouTube guides would again bless. A tarnished of no maidens. Crossed the fog to the lands between, to stand before the Elden Ring and get good.
Hi, I really like games, particularly the Soulsborne games. From the original Demon's Souls to Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, to the other ones that I haven't quite played yet, I love them all. I don't know if it's the difficulty of these games, the lore, the setting, the world building, characters, the different boss fights. Something about it just keeps me coming back. So imagine my surprise a couple of years back when I find out they're actually coming out with an open world version of the Dark Souls games. I want to preface this video with just clearing the air and letting everybody who's watching know that Elden Ring is one of my most favorite games of all time. I truly think this game is as close you can get to a 10 out of 10 for this type of game, and I've enjoyed playing it for hundreds of hours. I was so excited for the initial announcement of this game that, like many others, I jumped straight to Reddit to spend plenty of time digging through the different theories, discussions, and listening to what people had to say, only to be hit slowly but surely with the cold reality that we would be waiting for some time until we finally got our collectively greasy hands on this. I was more excited than a kid on Christmas Eve, comfortably tucked into my bed, listening to the snow fall down, hitting the roof ever so softly as you hear what sounds like Santa Claus slowly tiptoeing down into your chimney, only to find that it wasn't Santa Claus at all, it's a home intruder, and oh my God, who are you? What the fuck are you doing in my house? They were giving you a horse in this game, a fucking horse that you could ride around on and actually jump over things. And they had these things with like these big spikes in their chest that were like pulling along the carts, and the Game of Thrones guy was gonna do something, and it was super exciting. And I'm not exaggerating when I say I put a ton of hours into this thing, especially in the beginning of the game when you first go out and see how massive everything is. I spent the better part of at least 2 or 3 weekends just running around the perimeter of what I thought was the entire map, searching nooks and crannies for literally anything cool that I could find. And I have to say that my highlight from that initial stage of the game, probably like many others watching this right now, is when I found that first trap chest, I think deep in one of the catacombs or one of the early dungeons, opened it up only to be blasted in the face with some kind of weird purple nitrous oxide gas, and then transported into some insanely hard cavern filled with these weird ass centipede creatures that took me forever to figure out how to get out of. And as annoying as it was at the time, thinking back, that is such an awesome thing to happen in a game that's all about exploring. Coming off of the heels of Dark Souls 3 and just the Soulsborne series in general, Elden Ring really did have some big shoes to fill. And when it finally got into our collectively greasy little gamer hands, it delivered. So something really cool that Elden Ring did, and one of its biggest strengths in my opinion, is the fact that it gives the player a ton of agency and a ton of freedom. You're able to tackle challenges your way and play the way that you want to. For example, if you stumble upon a boss fight and you're not strong enough to beat him with the means that are currently available, or maybe just your skill, go explore and level up in another area and come back down to smack him down with ease the next time. Have you ever wanted to add a giant tornado of destruction and black flame to your toolkit? Well, now you can. Have you ever wanted to incinerate a horde of enemies in a swath of devastating flaming strikes, only to soon after turn around, pull out your sword, and blast them straight in the face with a Kamehameha blast? Haha, let me introduce you to the Sword of Night and Flame. Or how about getting in touch with your inner role player and running around pretending to be Guts from Berserk with the Greatsword? With the amount of freedom that this game gives you, I'm honestly surprised that there's not a Walmart, McDonald's, and a giant gas station bordering the main sections of the entire map. That was a joke for my American viewers. Elden Ring actively encourages and rewards the curious player for their efforts, unlike certain open world games that we are not going to name right now. There's no quest log or hints about what to do, which is a little bit annoying to some players, but I personally love that. And thank God that there's not 40, 50 towers just scattered around the map that you need to go and seek out individually just to activate and uncover certain areas of the world map. And my favorite thing about the exploration, which I've mentioned already like 3 times, is that wandering around and exploring this world actually rewards you with cool and interesting things and not just shrines. Exploring more often than not is going to bring you to things like cool and interesting items, super powerful weapons that you may have not otherwise found, and fully fleshed out bosses that pose a serious challenge. And at its best, Elden Ring will literally reward you with full-ass areas packed full of hours of content. Again, these are full-ass massive areas of the game that you can just easily miss or overlook that have nothing to do with the main quest line. These hidden areas have things inside them like massive ass dungeons, insane boss fights that you otherwise would never have seen, cool weapons that are nowhere else in the game, and different areas that you can explore that you would have otherwise easily overlooked. And if it wasn't for places like Reddit or YouTube, a lot of us probably never would have. Now that is how you encourage exploration in a game. And in my opinion, compared to other titles, it just feels so uniquely fun and rewarding to spend your time exploring and discovering what the Elden Ring map has to offer your first time around. After the initial tutorial, you're more or less just thrown into this beautiful, expansive landscape and just given the option to go wherever you want and do whatever you want. And like most of you, I decided to go get my shit slapped a couple of times by this motherfucker.
Now that's a lot of damage!
Now, of course, this has been done in other games before, and this is not something that's unique to Elden Ring, but to have this level of exploration at this scale in a Souls game, now that's enough to get me to pre-order the Deluxe Omega Ultimate Edition that comes with the customized FromSoftware gaming diaper. No longer are we pinned down by linear paths or predetermined outcomes. Nobody can tell you where to go, what to do, or that you're not allowed back here, sir. This is for employees only. I don't care that I'm not allowed back here. This is called the Cheesecake Factory, and I want to see how it's made. It's no secret that Elden Ring, much like the other Souls games that came before it, is tough. And similar to other FromSoftware titles, Elden Ring's gameplay masterfully challenges the player with a difficulty that's both formidable and fair. Though this time around, Elden Ring uses the player's freedom and ability to discover however they want to as a way of overcoming the challenges that the game presents. You still have the classic FromSoftware staples in Elden Ring for things like demanding strategic thinking, precise timings, and memorizing enemy attack patterns, but now the player has an additional method of overcoming any of the obstacles they're presented with. For example, during my first playthrough, like many others, I was getting absolutely slapped around by the first main boss, Margit. And I'm not too proud to admit that I spent the better part of a couple hours banging my head against the wall trying to beat this guy. you, Margit. Eventually, after many hours of pain, I decided I was gonna go off and explore and see what I could find to make myself a little bit stronger, and then come back later to bring the smack down. I wanted to go out and find something to kick this guy's ass to make up for my pathetic excuse for combat tactics. And that's when I found him. This wonderful bald man. Ooh, not that one. This wonderful bald man whose life I ended up sparing and was given this in return. And now that I'd acquired this item, I was ready to hoof myself back over to that talking horned bastard and kick his ass once and for all. Even though I used an item that technically made the boss fight a little bit easier, the fact that I had to go out and interact with the world in order to find it, to then come back and actually use it on him, made my experience that much more rewarding and fun for me. And my initial step into Elden Ring was a lot like that, really leaning into the fact that exploration is kind of the main selling point of this game and using that to my advantage. And I'm gonna go off on a short tangent about my first playthrough experience. It was honestly unlike any other previous gaming experience that I've had in recent memory. As a veteran of the Dark Souls series, I kind of felt like I knew what I was getting myself into and what to expect in terms of things like challenging boss fights or interesting level design or plenty of insane urges to just go ahead and smash my controller on the ground out of a fit of man-child rage.
This is not okay. This needs to stop now.
But I was blown away when I realized the insane amount of scale that this game had compared to the previous titles. The initial thrill of exploration and that true sense of discovery in a world that felt like it was filled with real danger. Like this thing that came out of literally nowhere and turned me into a fine red mist a bunch of times while I was just trying to explore this lake is a feeling that I haven't felt when playing a game in a really long time. And that includes other open world games. Things like getting fart gassed by that trap chest in the beginning of the game, getting sent to that higher level area that you had to fight your way out of, and then finally getting out only to wander a little bit too far into the southern Florida area of the map, to then get chased down by those local terrifying T-Rex dog hybrid monster things is peak exploration. Combine that with the polished and satisfying combat from the Souls series, and you've got something close to a masterpiece. I'll never forget that first time when I went down into the well to the Siofra River, Sofria River, whatever the hell it's called, only to be greeted by this massive hidden underground area complete with its own night sky. I'll also never forget the hundreds of resident mud goblins that were slowly chasing me around trying to poke me with a stick. In short, this game was based. But, and it's a big but, as based as this game is, once you've conquered the lands between, kissed the Elden Ring, and gotten the t-shirt, the magic starts to fade. In my opinion, Elden Ring's biggest problem is the diminishing quality after your first playthrough and the fact that the open world becomes tedious rather than fun and exciting. That once exciting exploration and open world becomes a chore in future playthroughs. Elden Ring is of course a game that has some really high highs, and overall it's truly an amazing game. But running it back after getting your first ending really shines a light on just how much filler there really is, and how Elden Ring can be seen as a little bit of a watered down experience when playing through it again. Playthroughs after your first one kind of tend to devolve into a little bit of a boss rush where you just kind of follow the path of grace from one main area to the next, kind of defeating the purpose and what makes Elden Ring exciting and unique when compared to other Soulsborne games in the series. The exploration and open world kind of take a back seat as they start to become a bit of an obstacle, standing between you and getting to that next main boss fight or seeking out that specific item or weapon. The theme of exploration kind of starts to become the enemy of efficiency. And efficiency kind of tends to be the thing that we seek out in future playthroughs. And because of that, you slowly start to realize that this big and open world isn't as full of interesting things that you previously thought. It's kind of similar to how some of us have that first game that we really fall in love with, where at the beginning we really immerse ourselves in it, taking it all in, like the lore of the world, the different characters that the game has to offer, and just enjoying the environment that we're playing in. The once epic questline becomes an efficiently mapped out route of how to collect a certain number of wolf asses to get to the next part. The fun and lively world becomes a barrier to you and getting those next 3 levels grinded out, so that you can go and efficiently efficiently grind out those next 3 levels solo in the zone next door without ever talking to anybody at all. And you remember that cool sword that you got that you were super excited about? Well, that's actually a 5 damage per second loss, so don't bother using it, because if you do, your imaginary damage number is going to go down. And if you can't keep that imaginary damage number high, your sense of self-worth will decay, and sorry. In my experience, replaying Elden Ring for the second time started to show more cracks than the cable guy who came over to my apartment to set up the internet. It's during that second playthrough where the open world started to feel less like an adventure and more like a chore. Once the curtain was pulled back a bit, what previously felt like a lively and interesting world just waiting to be explored seemed hollow and like it was only giving the appearance of fullness once the initial novelty had gone away. Things like copy-pasted catacombs, bosses, and mini-dungeons start to feel like they make up the bulk of the playtime, and they devolve from exciting to tedious, where they become just an obstacle that you have to trudge through to get to the good part. If I have to crawl my way through one more set of copy-pasted catacombs just to fight this piece of shit to get some whack spirit ash, I'm gonna shit my pants. From the second playthrough onward, things really start to drag when you realize that outside of the main quest line, the bulk of your exploration is going to be filled with repeated layouts, repeated mini-dungeons, repeated bosses, and repeated loot that probably doesn't even fit your build anyway. I also want to take a second just to acknowledge the fact that making a game at the scale of Elden Ring is not an easy feat. But that doesn't make this issue any less valid. And I'm not over here trying to say that dungeons in Elden Ring as a whole were monotonous or tedious. Some of the legacy dungeons in this game were absolute bangers. For example, Lanedale Capital and Stormvale Castle were my 2 favorite dungeons from this game. Absolute bangers. Those 2 slap so hard that they're contenders for my favorite dungeons among all of the Souls games. But when we take things like legacy dungeons out of the equation, second playthroughs and beyond really take away that magic that made Elden Ring so cool in the first place. It's kind of like when you grow up and you look back and realize that that older guy Jerry that used to buy your friend's beer wasn't really cool at all. But he did have a sick Camaro. The way that Elden Ring is designed, uncovering a hidden area or finding a really cool weapon or finding a really awesome boss feels amazing the first time around. But once you know where everything is and what it takes to get there, it becomes more of a checklist, it becomes a lot less exciting, and it kind of takes away that feeling of actually wanting to replay again the same way that we tend to like to replay the other Souls games. You might say,
excuse me, hold on a second. You could say the same thing about Dark Souls or Bloodborne or any of the other games. Once you play through those once, they become boring to play through a second time too.
To which I would respond, shut the f up. Secondly, yeah, you're right. You technically could say that, but Elden Ring was designed and built around the fact that you'd be going around in the open world discovering things for yourself. Taking that out of the equation leaves it feeling hollow compared to other games in the series. And open world design is not a bad thing, but due to the fact that other games like Dark Souls, for example, aren't open world, it really lets them be more focused and have more of the good stuff. All of this is to say that Elden Ring's biggest problem, in my opinion, is one of replayability. And if you're like me, the type of player who likes to explore every inch of the map, turn over every stone, and peek around every corner, then you're gonna feel that a lot more. It's just a fact that the replayability problem really does put a damper on your desire to do future playthroughs and to actually engage with exploring the world. After that first completion, the game just kind of loses its luster and you don't really want to explore anymore. And technically there's nothing wrong with that, it's just removing a core component of the game. So I know I've been waffling for a bit here about my issue with Elden Ring, and I'm sure there's over half of you already in the comments typing up your response about how I'm wrong and how I'm stupid, which is partly true. But hold on, before you post that comment, I wanted to talk a little bit about some possible solutions and ways that Elden Ring could potentially improve its replayability. Some of these are self-imposed by the player, and I came up with the rest of them after a hardcore 72-hour bath salts binge. Okay, so for those of you who have played Dark Souls 2, you'll know about this item right here. So why not add something like this into Elden Ring? In New Game Plus, or playthroughs after our first one, let us find items around the world that we can then use on sites of grace or before boss encounters to either increase the difficulty, change some mechanics, or do something interesting to make it a little bit different. This was a really cool addition to Dark Souls 2, and in most people's opinion who have played these games, it's the best iteration of New Game Plus that FromSoft has done so far. So bringing it to a game like Elden Ring with its massive scale would unlock even more possibilities than they were able to do with Dark Souls 2. So imagine you get this item and you either use it at the site of grace before a boss or before the boss fog gate. You activate it right before Melania, and now she does 2 waterfowl dances. I'm not much of an idea man, but I think there would be really cool ways to incorporate this into Elden Ring that could lead to really interesting ways of playing the game. And I know for a fact that if they added this, I would jump right back in and do at least 2 more playthroughs. Another way that you can make future playthroughs a little bit better is to just embrace the fact that the game was designed with this open world. I know that sounds stupid, but just hear me out for a second. Coming from the guy that was just talking the open world for like 10 minutes. If you didn't do the most thorough search of the lands between your first time around, this is the perfect opportunity to go ahead and search for things that you may have overlooked. There's very likely 1 or 2 quest lines that you either didn't find, didn't talk to the right person for, or just failed on accident because you didn't know the order of events that you were supposed to do. If you're that type of player, then the second or third playthrough is a perfect opportunity to comb through even finer to find those things that you may have missed. One of my favorite solutions, and likely the easiest one, is for you to subscribe to my channel. You can also try liking the video or telling me how many playthroughs you've done in the comments.
Please do it.
And another way to improve the replayability of Elden Ring, and the method that I most often fall back on myself, is to just embrace the fact that you've exhausted your discovery of the world. As big of a component as it is, it's still a really fun game without it. Challenge yourself with new ways of approaching the game. Check out a build or 2 that you normally wouldn't play as, and try to master the combat of using those weapons and skills. You can do things like challenge runs, you can go fast and do timed boss rushes, or you can take the red pill. You could join the dark side. You could become a degenerate PvP invader. I just want to say one more time that despite my issue with Elden Ring's replayability, I still think that it's one of the best games that I've ever played. And honestly, some people really don't mind the replayability issue, or they might just flat out disagree, which is fine, but you have to remember that I'm right, because I'm the guy standing in front of a green screen talking at you on YouTube. I do think the game could be massively improved by a little bit of tinkering from the devs on how New Game Plus is handled, but overall, of course, I think Elden Ring is great and it's worthy of all the praise that it gets. But honestly, I want to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of the video, whether or not you think this is a problem that Elden Ring has, and ways that you would improve the New Game Plus experience. And just a quick heads up, I'm a new channel, I'm small, I'm trying to grow and do more videos like this, so throwing me a subscription to the channel would really help me out and I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for watching guys, I'll see you in the next one.